So let's get into it. Strafing. Let's start with why it works. First of all, strafing you can consider as a two-dimensional action. Looking up and down has no effect whatsoever on your speed gain, your direction, none of that. You can look straight up, straight down. Your Airstrafes are only dependent on your left and right camera movement and your input directions on your keyboard. So why does strafing work? Here I have two axes to kind of illustrate my point here. So we can imagine that when we're flying, let's say we're flying in this direction, we're flying at very fast speed. We just came off a jump pad. We're going really fast along the z-axis of the map. Really fast, just looking straight. We're going really fast. But then we start holding, let's say D, for example. We start holding D. And as we saw earlier, we saw that when we hold D, if we have our blue looking vector here, holding D just adjusts our velocity vector to the right. It doesn't shrink it necessarily. It just adjusts it to the right. Our forward momentum stays the same. We just move to the right. If you remember maybe middle school, high school, this might be high school, it's been a while, high school physics. If you remember vectors, we can visualize why airstrafing actually gives you speed. So we know that our z-axis vector remains the same while we're holding D, but our direction changes. What does that mean? That means we're inducing a velocity on the x-axis. What does this do to our vector? This results in a compound vector, or your net movement, let's call it, being faster than just straight. Because our straight stays the same, but our x-axis changes. So, if we maintain this, if we abuse this vector, so we leverage this new sideways vector as our main velocity vector, we can abuse its gain speed. And by pushing it further and further away while catching it with our main z-axis vector, so essentially we're trying to move this vector to become this one. And when that happens, this elongates, but this x-axis force is still there. So this keeps this resultant vector keeps getting faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. And that's in principle how airstrafes work. Before I get into how you perform them and the different types of airstrafes that are relevant in Deadlock, because it is slightly different from games like Counter-Strike, which are more tactical, I want to go over the main rule of airstrafing, which is your speed, so how fast you're moving through the air, defines how fast you can rotate your camera. So what does this mean in practice? This means that the faster you're moving, the slower you can move your camera. Why is that? I'll show you. So we know we have this vector here, right? We can redraw the lines. Let's just pretend this is longer, but we can redraw the lines like this. This is still the same. Pretend this goes longer. I just don't want it to overlap. We can stay the same. So we can look at this. This angle here is what is important. If we make a smaller one, so let's say the x-axis force remains the same, but we're moving slower, and the resultant vector is something like that, we can see that this resulting angle, okay, this is a bad drawing, but this resulting angle is larger than this one. So the angle here is smaller than this one. What does this mean? This means we have less leeway to move this vector this way. Essentially, whenever we're moving our camera, we're trying to match this angle as perfectly as possible. We do not want to go past the rate of this angle, which I know I'm not being specific, but at the end of the day, this all comes down to practice and just doing it over and over again until you get the feeling. You start to understand essentially how fast you're allowed to strafe at any given moment. There's no way for me to quantitatively tell you, like, at X units per second, you should be rotating your camera X degrees per second. No. This comes down with practice and practice. But it's important to understand that the faster you go, the closer the angle is between these two vectors, because your directional vector, like the velocity you get from D is constant. From pressing a direction key is constant. So this never changes. So this angle gets smaller and smaller the faster we're moving along, I guess, your forward axis, which we'll call it the Z. So that's why this rule is king. If you strafe too fast, you start to lose speed. If you strafe too slow, you don't gain as much speed. So, as a rule of thumb, if you're still new and you don't want to fuck it up too bad, just go slower than you expect. Slower than you expect gives bigger results than faster than is allowed. Because the moment you go past your velocity vector, you are essentially counteracting your own air strafe and slowing yourself down. So, now that we have that out of the way, let's get into how do you actually air strafe? How do you do it? Well, let's look at the simplest example. Here we have our velocity vector in red, so which way our character is moving. So regardless of where we're looking, as we saw earlier, it's just which way we're flying, and then our looking vector. So this blue one is our looking vector. This white one, I'll explain later, is where we're looking at. So let's say we're flying this way, and we want to move to the right. We want to air strafe to the right. We want to either turn, we want to gain speed, whatever it is. We want to air strafe to the right. So step one is we need to create this directional vector. How do we do this? We already know, by pressing the key in the direction we want to go. So let's say we're strafing right. We want to be holding D. We want to be holding D because that moves our velocity vector towards the right. And when we do this, we want to match it with our looking vector. So as we try and match it, this will keep getting pushed away, and we want to keep trying to catch it, 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 keep trying to catch it. Essentially, making it so I'm holding D, and I want to look right, like this. D, look right. So if I want to air strafe, look right. If I want to air strafe left, holding A, looking left. So air strafing right, holding D, looking right. So, boom. Boom. So, that's the simplest form of strafing. Essentially, you're just moving you're creating your new movement vector, and then you're trying to match it. So you keep moving it, you keep moving it, you keep moving it, you keep trying to match it, you keep moving it, you keep trying to match it, you keep moving it, you keep trying to match it. Essentially, and that's it. Because if we go too fast, or too slow, sorry, we know this vector's tiny. We tried it before. We know this, just holding D is tiny. But if we hold D, if we abuse the diagonal vector, not the straight right vector, we can slowly push it. We can slowly push it by holding D, by keeping the smaller diagonal vector, and moving our looking vector closer. So we're essentially just tilting this graph. We're just tilting this graph to move this arrow, where we're moving to our desired location. Same in the opposite way. We want to go left, we press A, then we match it, but we look left. But there's more. If you were playing Counter-Strike, for example, I'd say this is enough. You understand B-hopping, you're set, you understand air strafing, you can get around corners, it's perfect. But sadly, this isn't Counter-Strike. Actually, not sadly, I love this game. It's great. They're both awesome. So, in Deadlock, there's going to be moments where you want to be moving backwards. You want to be moving in a certain direction, but you want to be looking backwards. You want to be looking behind you. You want to be like either using abilities, shooting, something on the way out. You want to be relevant. You don't want to be looking where you're going. So, how do we air strafe like this? Because if we hold D, what's going to happen here with our movement vector? It's going to go this way? Yeah, it's going to go this way. And then if we match it with this, we are we are counteracting our movement. As we can see that the angle got closer. So how can we think about this? I have this blue arrow here, which essentially acts as your pseudo looking position, because technically you're looking this way, but if you imagine your looking direction as where you're moving towards without your keyboard input, so without the D input, for example, that's moving this vector to the right slightly, instead of holding it straight behind you. Our looking vector is the z-axis. Our pseudo looking vector, is our forward, our momentum without the key input. So how do we match it? Well, to match it, in this case, these are essentially chained. So when they're in a line like this, when you're looking straight behind yourself, they have to remain in a line. If you want to remain looking backwards, these two have to remain in a line. So if we're trying to move our velocity vector to the right by holding D, how do we match this while keeping this line intact? Well, we have to look left. So when we're moving backwards, our input direction remains the same to the direction we want to strafe at. However, our looking direction flips, because we have to imagine that there is a straight line to essentially the back of your head, and you're looking through the back of your head. If you were looking through the back of your head and we're trying to strafe, you would want to move essentially the back of your head towards where you're trying to strafe. And to do that, we have to look the opposite direction. So we aim the back of our head to where we're trying to move to. So, in summary, when forward strafing, we understand that we're moving our velocity vector and then we're matching it with this. However, when backward strafing, we have to imagine that although we are looking forward, our pseudo looking vector, so our momentum vector, our momentum vector is what we're trying to move. And that is locked to where we're looking. So the angle between them has to stay the same. So we have to flip our look direction. So, example, if I'm moving right, I'm holding D and strafing right. But if I'm trying to strafe like this but backwards, so if I'm trying to strafe this way but backwards, I'm holding D but I'm looking left. See that? How I moved? Because if I do it the other way, it does nothing. Look, no moment, nothing. Don't turn, nothing. I'm on the same straight line. Look left. Because we're using essentially the back of your head. You have to imagine that you're trying to aim the back of your head to where you want to strafe to. Okay. So, we've gone over backwards and forwards air strafing. And to be fair, that's all you really need. More than this is a little bit extreme, but I just want you to understand that air strafing is only limited to the cardinal directions that your keyboard can input. Obviously, we can't input any angle possible on our keyboard because we're not on analog devices. At least most of us. Yeah, I know deadlock can be played on a controller, but that's gotta be insane. I also don't even know if you can b-hop on a controller. I'm gonna be honest. But yeah. So we're locked to those cardinal directions. We're locked to north, south, east, west, northeast, southeast, northwest, southwest. Because of keyboard inputs. Obviously, we can only press WASD or any combination of them. So WD, WA, AS, SD, anything like that. So, what does this mean? This means we can also air strafe sideways and diagonally. I'm gonna explain diagonal very briefly because not even I don't even use it. It's very hard to practice and not very useful, to be honest. So it's not really a part of my core mechanics. However, it's good to understand it so that you can get better at transitioning between different view angles while you're in the middle of an air strafe. Because obviously, I'm looking, let's say I'm strafing backwards, but then like I'm in full runaway mode, I'm obviously going to strafe better and be able to identify a better pathing if I'm looking where I'm going. So in the time I'm rotating my camera, you have two options really. You can either let go of all your movement keys so you don't lose speed while you're moving your camera to match your velocity vector and then continue air strafing forward after that. Or you can adjust your direction as you're moving your camera to ensure your strafe continues. But first, let me explain sideways and diagonal strafing so you understand essentially what I'm talking about. So once again, like we did with backward strafing, we have our velocity vector and our pseudo-looking vector, so essentially our momentum. So, first question. What keys are we pressing here to move the vector? Well, if we're facing this way, pressing D is going to do nothing because we're already moving towards the right. And as we saw earlier, if you're moving forward and you're holding W, you gain no airspeed, nothing happens. It's the same when you're moving sideways. If you're moving sideways and you're holding the direction you're moving in, you're gaining nothing. So how do we air strafe in this scenario? Well, let's think about it. Let's say we want to air strafe this way. So we want to go left from where we're looking. Well, first, we're trying to move our velocity vector this way. And how do we achieve that? We already know D is incorrect because D is the direction we're moving in and is going to do nothing. We also know A is incorrect because A would just be straight the opposite. So it would just slow us down. So we want to hold W because as we can see, we want to move our velocity vector towards our looking vector. So we hold W, which causes our velocity vector to move like this, initiating the strafe. So what did we talk about before? We said that our momentum / pseudo looking vector and our looking vector have to remain pinned to each other. Their angle has to stay the same if we're strafing like this. Obviously, not necessarily if you're just trying to match, if you're trying to like rotate yourself here to look forward, obviously these angles don't have to remain the same. But if we want to keep that sideways momentum while looking to the side and stay strafing sideways while looking sideways, this angle has to stay the same, which in this case is 90 degrees. So if we're trying to strafe left and we're holding W to move the vector this way, how do we move this closer? Well, we look left and then this moves closer and the cycle repeats itself of the same process from every other strafe. I'll show it here. You can see I'm holding W and moving my mouse left. And then this is causing me to jump in circles because I'm strafing, as you can see. Boom. See that? Pretty cool, huh? So, lastly, diagonal air strafes. So you know they exist, because they do exist. But I don't even think I can show this one off because I never practice these. But same question, right? Let's say we're here and we want to keep this angle. So we want to keep looking this way while our momentum moves this way because we're fighting somebody, whatever. And let's say we want to go, this time we want to go this way. So how do we move our mouse this way? Our vector this way? Well, first we know we have to move to the right. Because as we see this has to move right. However, if we just hold right, it's kind of just going to go like this, right? That's not what we want. We want a nice pivot. So what do we need to hold here? We need to hold D, and S, because we want the downwards and the sideways movement. We want down and side to move ourselves like this. And yet again, we have our momentum / pseudo looking vector, which we need to match. And as we know, this angle has to stay the same if we want to keep this airstrafe position. So we hold S and D to move this way, and we look right to start airstrafing. So here, I'll try this. Yeah, this is like, but yeah, here, you can see, for example, diagonal. Why am I explaining this? Well, diagonal, not very important. However, let's say you're airstrafing backwards and you want to switch to forwards. Like, let's say you're airstrafing backwards and you want to turn around. There is a moment in that turnaround where you can either just lose momentum, right? Or you can try and pivot your keys with an understanding of how the source engine works to do a 180. But this last one is more of a telling you it exists so you understand, you get a deeper understanding of why airstrafing works and why, yeah, and how it's possible. So yeah, that's it. Actually, there's one more thing. If you want to go forward, which a lot of people do want to do when they're airstrafing, because you use it to gain speed generally. You use it to gain or maintain speed, and not necessarily always to turn. Although that is one of its most valuable aspects, is your ability to maneuver in the air. So how do you go straight and want to keep speed? Well, it's easy. Essentially, you just spam right, left. Well, you don't really want to spam it, but you first press D, move your vector, match it, and then when you're satisfied and you don't want to go too far past that angle, you switch and you start pressing A. And the moment you start pressing A, you need to reverse that movement. You cannot, if you keep moving this way while you're pressing the other direction, you will instantly begin to lose speed. Instantly. Because you are changing this angle we talked about earlier, which is essentially just lowering your resultant vector. So if you want to go straight, first you strafe in a direction and then you immediately switch to the other. Always keeping in mind that your speed defines your max rotation speed. You do not want to change your strafe speed. So when you change direction. So what do I mean by that? I'll show you. So if I'm strafing right and then I strafe left really fast, all my speed is gone. You want to remain consistent in your air strafes. See? You remain consistent. You keep the speed the same. Obviously, at lower speeds, you can air strafe a lot quicker. So I'm running out of mass pad. Okay, but yeah. As you can see there, I was strafing too quickly. I jump dashed and I was strafing like I used to. You see, I'm losing speed. See in my top left, losing speed. But if I do it properly, I'm gaining speed. You see, I hit 800 there on a jump dash in the air, which is not necessarily normal. I can hit 800 on jump dashes, which is not normal. Sorry, that was a bit of a flex. Okay, so yeah, there you go. Enjoy.